Hi everyone. If you've seen these boxes in Xcode and wondered what they are for and which ones you need, this video is for you. We are also going to look at real devices, scale factors, and how different SpriteKit scale modes affect the final look of your game. As you may know, most iOS devices nowadays have Retina display, which has higher pixel density. And so we need high-resolution images for these devices. First, let's have a look at what would happen if we took the same asset of the same size and just store it either as 1x or 3x, and then display it on iPhone 16 Pro, which is a 3x device. You can already see a difference between these two images, especially if you are watching this video on a bigger screen. But if we zoom in, it will become more apparent. In other words, if we just provide a 1x image, there will be a slight blur on Retina devices. Therefore, it is generally recommended that when you draw an asset, that you make it in 3 different sizes. So you store 1x for non-Retina devices and double the size and triple the size for Retina devices. We'll later in the video have a look at how to do that in the graphics editor Krita. In Xcode, when you drag and drop an asset, it will be stored by default as 1x, but you can move it around between the slots as you want. But there's a convention that you can name your asset files with the add symbol, followed by 1x, 2x, or 3x. And then when you drag and drop those files to Xcode, they will allocate the right slots. However, the question is whether we actually need all of them nowadays. For example, let's say you only want to support iOS 18 devices. You can navigate to the official iPhone user guide, and if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there will be a link to all compatible devices where you can find all the devices that should be supported if you decide to only support iOS 18. And the same with iPad. You can navigate to the official iPad user guide, and at the bottom of the page, there's a link to the iPad compatible devices for that iOS version. Also, you might want to check out a page like ios-resolution.com. Here you can find all iOS devices in one place, and what's really useful here is the scale factor. For example, if you look at iPads, you'll see that most of them are scale factor 2, and there are only few which have scale factor 1. And if we now look at iPhones, you'll see that there are many which are 2x or 3x, but only few old ones which are 1x. Based on that information, if you only want to support new devices, you can freely omit the 1x variant. Let's now have a look how we can create game assets. When you start a new SpriteKit project, the scene will have its size set by default to 750 by 1334. You can change it if you want it to better fit your design or the devices you want to support. I'm gonna stick with the default one. A common way is that you first start with the highest resolution image and then lower its resolution for 1x or 2x when needed. One thing to note here is that the scene size is actually in points, not in pixels. So to create an image that will cover it completely on a 3x device, we need to triple the size, which in my case is 2250 by 4002. For this demo, let's try to draw something resembling a nebula in the outer space. First, we can select a very dark blue or purple and fill the whole image with that color. Then we create a new layer, switch to the brush tool and look for the brush called watercolor texture. Then we can set the color, for example, to some kind of orange. Set the opacity to about 50% and the brush size to the maximum value possible. Then with that brush, we draw some kind of nebula. Next, we find the start field brush. We can set the color to some kind of white, set the brush size to the maximum value possible again, and just draw some stars. We can also find and use the sparkles brush to draw some sparkles. And lastly, we can use a brush called airbrush, set blending to addition, and make some glows around stars or wherever we want. Now that we are done with the image, we can go to File, Export, and export it as our 3x file. We save it as a PNG file and confirm the export. Then in Finder, we locate the file and make a copy and store it as a 2x file. Then in Preview, we can resize it to double the original size, which is 1500 by 2668 pixels. We'll also use two assets from Kenney.nl, a planet and a rocket. Again, we can use the highest resolution images as 3x and lower the resolution to make 2x. We then move them to Xcode, to assets. And in the scenes did move method, we just add 3 sprite nodes. And now in game view controller, we can experiment with the scale mode. So let's start with fill mode. This one is used by default. And as you can see, the scene is stretched to fill the screen completely. And because the aspect ratio is different, it distorts the image. Now let's have a look at aspectFill. As you can see, the scene is scaled to fill the screen, but this time its aspect ratio is kept, but also it means that its edges are cropped. The next one is aspect fit. As you can see, the scene fits entirely within the screen without cropping, but it does leave black bars. The last one is resizeFill, and with this one, the scene size is resized to exactly match the screen. So personally, I liked aspectFill the most. I don't think there's a use case for fill. As for aspect fit, I don't think we really want black bars in modern games. And lastly, resizeFill. I think that one can work, but you need to design for it. So that's what 1x, 2x, and 3x are all about. You probably don't need to worry about 1x anymore. Just focus on 2x and 3x for modern iPhones and iPads. And if you want your game to look its best, make sure you are creating your assets at 3x, then scale down from there. We also looked at how different SpriteKit scale modes affect how things show up on screen, so you can pick the one that fits your design best. I hope this video was useful. See you in the next one.